Hello sweet friends, welcome back to Seed and Sparrow Homestead. It is officially fall and I'm so excited. It's about 67 degrees outside. The sun is shining, but there's that briskness in the air, a light breeze, and you can just smell fall. You know that scent I'm talking about? That has just really inspired me to bring some of the flavors and the coziness that fall is all about into my homestead kitchen this week, and I want to bring you along. So let's make some fall-inspired recipes. So what says fall more than like a really hearty, creamy soup? That's what I have been craving. So we're gonna make a potato steak soup here, make it super creamy. I went shopping in my pantry. I love my shopping basket. So I grabbed some potatoes, about 2 pounds worth. I grabbed a shallot. You can use an onion, whatever you've got. Some garlic cloves, and I grabbed a chuck roast. Whoops, I don't want to drop that. Chuck roast from my freezer. So I'm gonna get that roast thawing, and we're gonna work on chopping up these veggies. These are some of my homegrown potatoes that we harvested together. I never wash my potatoes before storage. You shouldn't do that. So if you're new to potatoes, make sure you're not washing your potatoes and then putting them into storage. I try and just brush off as much dirt as I can, and then when we go to use them, I will give them a good scrub down. Potatoes for me are a comfort food. I love any type of potato. I especially love them in soups. It just says warm and cozy to me. I'm just gonna chop these up fairly large, but you can make them whatever size you want. I like to have a nice big chunk of potato in my soups. I have diced up my roast here pretty fine. I'm seasoning it with salt and pepper. I am using a chuck roast, like I said. This is a juicier, more tender cut. It has more marbling in it. Some other cuts you could use would be bottom or top round or an eye roast. Those will give you a more tender bite of steak. I like to reserve my actual steaks for eating just as that, a steak. I'm also using some steak seasoning from Redmond Real Salt here. I like this because I know it has good ingredients in it, no additives. If you want, you can check out the description for a discount code, which will get you 15% off at checkout. I have some oil nice and hot in my pan here, and I'm going to sear this steak on all sides. I'm not really looking to cook it all the way through, but I do want them to be nice and brown and seared on each side. The steak will continue to cook in the soup when we add it in. I'm dicing up my shallot here, or shallot, however you would like to say it. I like shallots because they're a bit sweeter, a bit more delicate in flavor, not so much of a bite like an onion would have. I personally love them. I think I'm going to grow many more of those compared to onions. And I'm also going to mince up some garlic here. This is garlic I grew in my garden. And just in case you're not on top of it, make sure you grab some garlic to plant because that is coming up very soon. We need to plant our garlic in the fall for a summer harvest. These are going to go back into the pan where the steak was. I removed that, but they're going to cook for a few minutes in all of the steak juices until they're nice and tender. After they have cooked for about 5 minutes, I'm going to start to add in some beef broth here. And I'm going to make sure to scrape up all of those tidbits from the steak. As always, you can find all of today's recipes found in the video down in the description below. I kind of wasn't thinking, and I had to transfer everything over to an actual soup pot. And I am going to bring this up to a boil, add it in my potatoes. I'm going to cover this, and they're going to cook until the potatoes are tender, about 10 to 15 minutes. In a smaller saucepan, I am going to start a roux. A roux is a thickener. It is equal parts butter and flour. So I'm going to melt my butter here, and I'm going to add in some flour. And I'm going to allow that flour to cook up and really absorb that butter. We're going to mix it up well and cook it for about 2 minutes or so. Next, I'm going to start to add in some milk. I'm going to do this slowly because you're going to see as I add in the milk, it's going to start to thicken even more. You want to do it slowly, otherwise you're going to end up with a really chunky end result, and we don't want those little bits floating around. We want a nice, smooth roux. After our potatoes are fork tender, we're going to add this milk mixture slowly into the potatoes with the broth, stirring the entire time until it's all mixed in together. Then we're going to allow this to sit for about 4 minutes until everything has thickened up. I've added a steak back into the pot. I'm also going to add in some heavy cream. And then I'm just going to put this on low heat and allow it to simmer, allow all of the flavors to mingle, allow everything to thicken up nicely. I served up this soup with a generous helping of a freshly grated sharp white cheddar cheese. We are big cheese lovers in this household. We believe everything is better with cheese on it. I also had some sourdough that I had purchased from the store. I have yet to get out my sourdough starter from its long dormancy in the fridge. We're going to work on that here soon because it's fall, and fall means lots of baking. I added some of our freshly made apple butter to this loaf. You gotta try apple butter. I'm not sure if it's sold like all over. I know here in PA it's everywhere, but if you can't make it, maybe you can find it at the store. The next morning, I got up and I had the urge to make all of the pumpkin things. And I wanted to make some things for the kiddos that they could enjoy, and I felt good about giving them. We don't do processed food here. So any snack type items are things that I make. So for breakfast, I decided to make a smoothie, but I made it like a pumpkin spiced smoothie. So I've added in a banana. I'm going to add in some milk as well. In hindsight, I think I would have only added in half a banana next time. You know, bananas and smoothies, they can just take over and all you taste is banana. So I definitely would cut some of the banana out next time. Added in a nice scoop of vanilla Greek yogurt. And then I'm going to add in probably about a half cup of pumpkin. I had quite a few cans of pumpkin in my pantry that really needed to get used up. So this was the perfect opportunity, a day full of pumpkin recipes. I added in about a half teaspoon of vanilla extract, some cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, and I think a touch of allspice. I added in some chopped pecans as well, but if you can't have nuts or don't like them, totally leave them out. It did give a really nice flavor to this smoothie though. I also added in some pitted medjool dates. That really helps to sweeten this up. I'm not adding any processed sugars. This was actually really delightful. Nothing about it was overly sweet. It wasn't too pumpkin-y. It wasn't too spiced. Just really yummy. That's really good. Here, you try. You see if you like it. Is it good? Is it good?
Yeah.
Yeah, you like it?
Yeah.
You want more?
Uh-huh.
You're gonna hold it? Okay, be careful. I also decided to make a pumpkin themed snack. We're gonna make some pumpkin pie bites. I'm starting with some almond butter. You can use any sort of nut butter or seed butter. I like using almond butter. I find it's just not so overpowering as a peanut butter would be. I'm gonna throw in some of our canned pumpkin, some maple syrup, a splash of vanilla, some pumpkin pie spice, and some salt, and then we're gonna mix all that together before adding in some oats. For the final ingredient, I'm gonna add in some sugar-free organic chocolate chips. My kiddos will eat anything that has chocolate in it. And then I'm gonna roll these up into some small balls. Now, Grant gobbled these up. He loved them. I think next time I am going to run everything through the food processor except for the chocolate chips. I'll add them in after. Eleanor sometimes can be funny with textures, and she didn't love the texture of the whole oats in here. So I think if I would blend them all up, she may be more of a fan. Still really yummy for the rest of us, and these are pretty customizable. You could add more or less of any of these ingredients to your liking. I'm gonna get my oven preheating to 350, and we're gonna continue on with our pumpkin inspired recipes. I found this recipe online. It's not one of my own. It had really good ratings. We're gonna make some pumpkin breakfast bars, although I'm going to make them in a pie plate because that's what I have. I'm gonna cut some parchment here to fit it. If you don't know this trick, just fold a piece of parchment paper twice to create a square. The corner that's between the two folded edges, put it into the center, and then measure out to the edge of the pie plate, and then just cut in like a semi-circle pattern there in an arch, and when you open it up, it'll fit your pie plate. I'm gonna also add in some spray oil here, make sure nothing is sticking, and we are gonna get some flour into our bowl. Also gonna add in some rolled oats. I'm gonna add in some pumpkin pie spice, some salt, and baking soda. I'm gonna mix that all up before adding in some eggs, some pumpkin puree. Now this recipe called for applesauce, and I thought, well, I'm gonna mix it up. I'm gonna try using some of my apple butter since I already had it open from last night's bread. And that was a good call. If you ever have the option to substitute apple butter for applesauce. It's really good. I also decided to swap out the brown sugar the recipe called for with some maple syrup. I'm really trying to do away with processed sugars. It seems my kids are super sensitive to sugar, but they do just fine when I use honey or maple syrup as a sweetener. So we're trying it here and also adding in a splash of vanilla. The recipe called for some pumpkin seeds and some chopped pecans, but my kiddos don't love either of those things. Again, it's a texture thing. So I left those out, but I'm sure they would be lovely added in. And in the recipe, it also says to top this with some extra pecans and pumpkin seeds, and it did look quite lovely. So if I knew my kiddos would like them, I would have definitely added them. For the next recipe, we're gonna make another soup. I need to gather a few things from out in the garden, and let me tell you what a dream this feels like. I have honestly dreamt for so long about growing enough things that I can really put a good dent into what I'm buying at the grocery store. I mean, obviously this doesn't happen all year round, but it's so fun to be able to go outside and pick some of the ingredients and prepare a meal with them right away. In typical me, I always get distracted by some flower while I'm outside and just take a look at this dahlia. Stunning. So from the garden, I gathered some leeks, celery, some onion, and some herbs. I have some thyme, rosemary, and sage. And here is our breakfast bake fresh out of the oven. We'll cut into that a bit later. First, I'm going to get all of the veggies chopped up. I'm going to brown up some ground pork for this soup. I am going to melt a stick of butter here in my soup pot, to which we will then add the veggies. The veggies will cook in here until tender, about 10 to 15 minutes. Meanwhile, I'm going to work at chopping up all of these fresh herbs. I like to refer to herbs as money plants because if you were to buy these at the store, fresh herbs from the grocery store, they would cost a pretty penny. They don't require much space at all. You could even grow them on a windowsill. But I have grown hundreds of dollars worth of herbs in my garden. They have such a small footprint, and some of them are even perennials, will come back year after year. They're so easy to grow. A great place to start when gardening, especially if you are low on space. Moving back to our veggies, we're going to add in some flour here. Remember, there's already butter in the pan, so we're going to make another roux, but we're going to do it with the veggies already added, stirring everything up really well, allowing that flour to cook up for a minute or two. I'm going to add in our chopped up herbs, some salt and pepper. I'm going to add in some vegetable stock, nice and slow again until this mixture thickens up. After the vegetable stock has been added in, I'm adding in a 12-ounce can of beer here. This is something you can omit if that's something you're not comfortable with or you just don't like it. It adds a really nice flavor. I am using an Oktoberfest beer. And if you don't want to use the beer, you could just add in some more vegetable stock or a combination of vegetable stock and some milk. So here I added in some milk. I'm also going to add in some heavy cream to make it extra creamy. Adding our cooked pork and all of the drippings into the soup pot. I have a smaller pot with some boiling water ready to cook some gnocchi in. This is gnocchi I made last season from some pumpkins. We have pumpkin gnocchi going into this soup. You could use any type of gnocchi you can find though. I will link the video for you of where I made some gnocchi last year. I made some regular potato gnocchi and some sweet potato gnocchi with you in a video last fall. I told you we really love cheese here. So I have 16 ounces of sharp white cheddar cheese going in here. But again, you can use whatever cheese you have on hand or whichever one you prefer. Gnocchi's super easy to cook. All you have to do is wait for it to float. And then I strain it out and it goes right over into our soup pot. Again, after combining everything together, I like to turn the heat down, allow it to simmer, and have all of those flavors mingled together. Most times we like soup even better the second day. However, this soup is exceptional even on the first day. Another flavor that reminds me of fall is apple, and I wanted to make a good hearty biscuit to go with our soup. I decided to do a cheddar and apple biscuit. I love when a savory and sweet mix. So we're going to start off with some flour. I'm using einkorn here. Typically I would use an all-purpose, but I had this in my pantry and it needed to get used up. To the flour, we are also going to add some baking powder, some granulated sugar, some salt, and some pepper. To that, we're going to grate in some butter. This butter should be very cold. And then we use a fork or a pastry blender to get the butter all combined until you have pieces about the size of a pea. To that, we're going to add in some diced apples, some fresh rosemary, and some cheese, of course. Again, I'm using some white sharp cheddar. Then we are going to mix in some heavy cream, and we are going to combine this until it just comes together. You don't want to overmix this one, and definitely don't use your hands. You will make the butter too soft. Then we are going to turn it out onto some flour, and we're just going to pat it gently to about 1 inch thick. I'm going to cut these into rounds. This is a little biscuit cutter that I got from an antique store. That's one of my favorite places to find gadgets for the kitchen, either at an antique store or a thrift store. If you don't have any sort of round cutter, you could always use a mason jar ring. I use those sometimes as well. I'm going to pat the top of these with some heavy cream, and then we'll get them into the oven. Okay, so I just pulled my biscuits out and they're all flat. Regardless of how flat they are, they're amazing. Make them. I think this happened maybe for 2 different reasons. So I picked up a bunch of butter from the store today and we had a few errands to run, and by the time we got home it wasn't very solid. It wasn't very cold anymore. So I think my butter was too soft. And I just wasn't being patient enough. I should have just stuck it into the freezer for a few minutes, and I didn't, but whatever. And I also typically bake with like an all-purpose flour, and I used einkorn today. And there's a bit of a learning curve there with just kind of structure and the dry to wet ratio, so that could be some of it too. But I think a lot of it is honestly the fact that the butter was not cold enough. But I mean, even if these would come out flat every time I'd make them, I would continue making them. They are so good. I think you can make a bunch of different variations on this as well. Different types of cheese, different types of fruit, but this is a fantastic combination. All right, friend, that wraps up today's video. Here's a peek at that pumpkin breakfast bake we made earlier. It came out really good. It's super moist, and I decided to serve it with some extra apple butter spread on top. I hope you enjoyed all of these fall-inspired recipes from my homestead kitchen. There will be many more as the season goes on. I hope you feel inspired to perhaps bring in the flavors and the coziness and warmth of fall into your kitchens as well. Blessings on your day, friend. Until next time, take care.